So good evening, everyone. Let us start the webinar. So today's webinar's title is How to Face an Interview. In this session, we are planning to introduce you to a structure of an interview, how you can prepare for the interview, how you can face an interview, and also we are going to give you some tips and tricks in terms of how to face the interview confidently, as well as some tips and tricks in terms of what you might be asked, what they are looking for, etc. So I assume that most of the people who are participating today are junior people. And with that assumption, I will discuss this topic. But at the same time, I will give some tips and tricks here and there for experienced people as well. Even we will discuss some things in relation to how to become an interviewer as well, rather than an interviewee as well. Let me introduce myself. I'm Sami Sabesingh. I am the Vice President of People Development at Cogent. This initiative of the public webinar series is brought to you by TekXila, a product powered by Cogent. TekXila is basically an effort to provide you an online-based education programs in order to help boost your career on fast track and help develop you to become industry ready. And I will also introduce TekXila slightly towards the end of the webinar. So let's start with the topic of how to face an interview. And towards the end, if you have any questions, I will open the floor as well for your questions as well. So what is an interview? Well, basically it is an opportunity for you to provide your sales pitch. Now, if you attended our first webinar on how to prepare a CV, I explained in there that a CV is what you send to the organization first up. It is your advertisement. When they look at your CV, when they scan your CV, if the organization is happy with the CV and if your CV has things that the organization is looking for, you will be invited for an interview, right? Most of the time, interview is a face-to-face engagement between a person from the organization interviewing you and you facing the interviewer to prove that you are good enough for the organization to be hired. So when people are being hired by companies, right, it's kind of a sales pitch, because what you're basically saying is that I have these skills, I'm good at these, here are my attributes, here are my traits, I am worthy of being employed in your organization, in return give me a salary, right? So a monetary transaction is involved. So, and unless otherwise you provide a good pitch about yourself, it's not going to happen. People will not hire you into the company or the organization if you fail giving your pitch properly. So you have to become a bit of a salesman in an interview. That's what it means, right? And it is also a meeting between two parties with two objectives. They are not competing objectives, they are complementary objectives, but at the same time, objectives are slightly different. You are trying to get a job, whereas the organization is trying to hire a person, right? So you have some consensus between the two parties, but at the same time, there are slight difference in objectives when you are facing an interview. So what are the objectives? Well, from an employer's perspective, or from the perspective where the person who is conducting the interview, or from the perspective from the organization who is trying to hire you, the objective is to find out whether you have the skills to do the job, whether you will do the job, and whether you will be a good fit for the organization, right? Now, it is one thing that you will have the skills to do the job, but it is another thing that you will do the job, right? Skills is one thing, and the willingness to do the job is another thing. Probably it is about the interest, the passion, the attitude, the motivation. So it is not only the skills that they are looking at when they interview you, they also look at your attitude and interests and motivation and your passion towards the work that you have. And the other aspect is that when you are hired, you are going to be part of the organization. You will be part of a team. So your personality needs to match and map to the organizational culture. So they want to see whether you are going to be a good fit for the organization, right? So those things will be the objectives of the employer. And you want to impress the employer, and you should also focus on assessing the position on offer, right? An interview is an opportunity to understand the role that you have to play better, right? You will have a particular perception about the job that you are trying to apply, trying to go to, but various organizations will have various specifics in terms of the role. So you need to be able to go in there and have an understanding in terms of what is really expected, kind of scenario, right? So what does the position offer me is one question that you should be able to answer through the interview. And you also need to map it to your career plan, right? Doing just a job is not going to help you in the long run. You need to make sure that it is going to help you in the long run by developing your career on a continuous basis. So in the interview, I will explain in a little while in the slide deck as we go through this presentation, that you have some opportunities to gauge the job, and you have to do a good job at that when you are facing an interview. And you need to understand what they are looking for. I already had this slightly mentioned in the previous slide. They're going to look at your skills. And in an interview, obviously, they are predominantly going to look at your communication skill, your presentability, your speaking style, etc., and your ability to face a situation and answer questions. And sometimes you will be they will try to confuse you with some complex questions. If you can hold the ground, not lose the focus, and be able to answer those, are going to be some set of skills that you are showing off in the interview skills, interview itself. And they will seek for evidence in terms of your people skills, right? Your ability to work with people, your teamwork, your leadership skills, etc., etc. And one of the other primary areas that people are probing when somebody comes for an interview, when the organization wants to hire somebody, they want to probe and see whether you are a good problem solver. Right now, this is especially true for the software sector, because even if you are a quality assurance person, even if you are a DevOps person, or even if you are a developer person, you need to be able to solve problems on a daily basis. You need to understand what that bug is. You need to understand how to come up with a proper test plan. You need to understand how to deploy the server and understand the problems in relation to the deployment, right? So problem solving is a critical skill today that people are going to test in an interview situation. So you need to be prepared for that. So those are the skills. Then they will also look for attributes. What kind of a personality are you, right? Now I have done thousands and thousands of interviews, and it is very hard to say that I get a similar kind of personalities, even in this particular sector that I have worked for 20 years. They're very different, right? Because personalities are very different, individuals are very different from each other, right? But it has to be a fitting personality. And you as a person needs to be confident about your personality. That's what we are looking at when we are interviewing. We are not looking for a particular personality. We are looking for a confident personality. We are looking for a passionate and enthusiastic personality. And we are looking for a confident character with passion and commitment that will get the job done, right? And your attitude matters, right? Like I said earlier, later in the slides, I will explain what this attitude is all about and how we are going to test it. and your attitude matters. And we also want to understand whether you are a responsible and accountable personality, right? And then if you are a good fit for the organization, if you are a good fit for them, you need to be able to match the culture and match the value set that the organization has, right? Most of the software organizations today are in an open culture with flat hierarchies, right? And most of the organizations will have flexibilities and freedom. So we need to be able to trust you, and you have to have integrity. You have to have you have to be trustworthy. You should be a person who value the organization values, etc., etc. Right? So these are the three main pillars that they look for when they interview you. Right? So you need to have some understanding and get prepared into be presentable in these areas. So one of the key questions that people ask, or one of the key challenges that I see when I interview junior people, especially, is that they're very nervous. Right? You are really bothered. Like, will they ask something that I don't understand? Or would I be able to answer these questions? What will happen if I am unable to answer something? Would I get the job? Right? That's the biggest question, right? Would I get the job? Now, my advice is that relax. None of these things matter, because if you get into a nervous situation, if you be afraid in front of the interviewer, you're not going to face it properly anyway, right? You are going to get into trouble by being nervous. So relaxing and being your own self is very, very important. We are not planning to hire carbon copies. We want to get individuals who have great character. So be yourself, relax. Maybe you don't know some things, maybe you know things. That's all fine. Even if you fail the interview, it's fine, right? You will learn something out of the interview. So forget about failing, forget about getting a job. Be yourself and try and get the job. That should be the attitude. And the other biggest thing that you have to remember is that, on the other side, yes, it might be a senior person, it must be somebody from the organization, it might be a person who is making a decision about your life. It's all okay, but at the same time, that person is also a human being. The person who is interviewing you, he or she, is also a human being, right? So you are talking to another human being. So don't bother, don't be nervous, don't worry about the situation. Know that they want you. That's why they are interviewing you, right? Some of the senior people from that particular organization, that particular company that you're going for an interview for, is going to spend a considerable amount of time. They're going to invest time to talk to you in order to hire you, right? So relax and make sure that you are not nervous, right? So I give you some concrete reasons and I give you some tips in terms of how not to be nervous, right? So for some more tips during the interview process, you need to have focus on the situation, right? And very carefully listen to the questions. One of the key problems and key challenges that I have when I interview people, especially junior people, is that they don't listen to the question. They come up with a canned answer. I'm not looking for a canned answer, because I know if you're from a university, for example, if I ask a particular question from the first person, from second person to the 10th person, everybody is going to know that question, right? So I'm not going to be impressed with the same answer that I'm getting from all the people, because it is not a test paper, right? It's an interview. Interview is different. A test paper is different. I want to understand the personality, skills, etc., like I told you, right? So you are going to be asked specific questions about yourself. So listen carefully, right? Sometimes I ask people, what is the part you did in your final year project, for example, right? That's an example question. And people say what their final project is. That's completely wrong, because the question was, what did you do in the final year project? Not what was your final year project, right? They're two different questions. So carefully listen to the question and answer the question. Remember, relax, and be yourself, right? If you didn't clearly get the question, it's a human being on the other side who is interviewing you, right? Ask for clarifications, ask to repeat the question, they will do so. You don't have to worry. And pay attention to detail. When you listen, when you focus, pay attention to the detail that are being questioned, right? Don't provide canned answers, because canned answers does not give that sense of innovation, right? We are trying to understand your personality, your creativity, right? So pay attention and answer the question at hand, and not something that you think was the question. Now, the other aspect is that you have to really prepare before the interview. Now, this is your homework, right? So from education perspective, trying to understand the interview process perspective, this piece is very important, right? Now, if you are in the technical field, and if you are in a non-technical field even, right, the principles matter, right? You are going to get asked some fundamental questions about, let's talk software and operating systems, for example. What is an object is, what polymorphism is, what inheritance is, what an operating, what a compiler is, what system software is, right? The fundamental questions are going to get asked, right? So you need to remember your principles before you go to the interview. Some people come to the interview and I ask a question and they say they don't remember. Well, if you don't remember what you learned in the campus or the course of study, how are you going to remember the things that we are going to tell you, which are going to be very complicated, right? We have processes, procedures, policies to be followed in an organization. If you don't remember your principles, you are going to violate principles when you come in, right? So this piece is about theory, but when you come to the organization, we need you to remember some things, unfortunately or fortunately, right? Otherwise, we can't get things done. The other thing is that know your CV. Some people put everything possible or even copy from other people and put everything into the CV, right? And when you are being interviewed, your CV is going to be looked at, right? You are going to get questioned based on your CV. If you said something about a technology, they're going to ask about that technology. If you said something about your project, they're going to ask about that project, right? So you need to get prepared in terms of the CV. If you put a particular skill in there, if you put a particular technology in there, if you put a particular project in there, they're going to ask, right? And the other most important thing is that when you are talking about a project, for example, you need to know the background. You need to know what the project is, why the project was done, why some things were done in that manner, etc., etc. So many people are very good at saying what the project is, but very many people are not capable of saying why it was done that way, right? For example, the simple question of why did you use PHP for that particular project? People don't understand, right? Why did you do it using that algorithm and not use another algorithm? People don't understand, right? So knowing your CV is very important, because most of the questions are going to be based on your CV, right? What you are going to advertise, you are going to get questioned on. So you need to know the facts and figures and the technologies and the rationale of things in and around your CV. Then you are going to for an interview in relation to a particular organization. You need to do your homework for the regarding the organization, right? The easiest way is to look at the website, right? Now, when some people come, I usually ask this question: do you have any questions for me? So I'm interviewing the person. I'm asking the interviewee whether they have some questions. And they ask me, so what products are you developing? Well, the immediate impression is that you didn't do your homework. You want to join this company. A while ago, you told me that you love this company, and you are asking me now what the products are. So you love the company, even knowing what the products are is simply a joke. It doesn't add up, right? It shows you don't have integrity, right? So study the company if you want to join that company, right? That's not just for passing the exams or interviews, but it is also about your career. You need to understand whether this organization is a fit for me, whether it is a kind of organization that I would like to work for, whether it will give me respect, whether it give me identity, whether it will give me the means to meet my purpose. All those things matter. So spend some time and understand the organization. That's a very critical factor. And the other one is you need to know the kind of role that you are applying for. What role are you going to play for? What role you are going to play, right? And then you need to understand some semantics about what the expectations are, etc., etc. Because if you are, for example, if you are a quality assurance engineer, there's a general set of expectations from that particular role. If you are a business analyst, there's a general set of expectations from that role, right? There's tons of information out there on the internet. So understand the kind of role that you are applying for, study that space, go prepared and ask relevant questions in relation to that role, right? When you are given an opportunity. And your narrative, your elevator pitch matters. I told you at the beginning that interview is a good place for you to pitch your sales narrative, right? So you have to have narratives for two things, right? One thing is that you have to have your narrative about yourself. Who are you? What do you do? What are you capable of? What are your expectations? Expectations in the sense not salary, but rather what your expectations in terms of your career growth, etc., etc., right? Then about the projects and the products that you have involved with, you have worked on, you need to have a narrative. What was that product or the project? Why was the project done? What were the outcomes? What did you learn, right? And remember, narratives are not half an hour stories, right? Now, in an interview, we don't have 2 hours to spend with you, right? Maybe maximum 30 minutes or 45 minutes maximum, right? So these pitches, these elevator pitches, you have to prepare for 1-2 minutes or maximum 3 minutes. You should be able to say that in few minutes and be done with it, so that you can give meaning to the interviewer to understand what the space is all about. So here are some sample questions, right? Tell me about yourself. That's a great opportunity to provide your elevator pitch about yourself, right? Why do you want to join us? Why did you consider this stream or the job, right? Why did you want to become a software engineer, right? Why did you go to study engineering and computing or information? Why are you studying information technology? Why do you want to become a DevOps engineer, right? And what is your passion? That's a very common question, right? Now, passion, when I ask this question, most of the time people talk about their passion in terms of their general life, right? Or some people say it about their technology, right? Your passion could be non-technical, right? But there could be a passion in relation to technology as well, right? So the passion could be twofold, right? So be aware of that and clarify the question. Are you asking in relation to the stream, or are you asking in relation to my general life, right? And who's the person who motivates you the most, right? So I'm asking, is there a person that motivates you, right? Now, this is a very tricky question. If you want to understand the real meaning of this particular question, go and Google search and learn about givers and takers, right? There's a book called Givers and Takers by Adam Grant. He explains who are the givers and who are the takers, and why givers are better when it comes to doing a job properly rather than takers kind of stuff, right? So there's a connection of giver-taker attitude when it comes to motivation, right? So do some research and try and understand that space. It's very important to understand. Then there will be futuristic questions, right? The purpose of this question, where do you see yourself in 3 years, is we are trying to understand whether you understand a sustainable career in this field. And we also understand whether you are a person who knows how to plan, right? So, and then the other last one is, do you have any questions for me? The interviewer, the person who is interviewing you, might ask whether you have you have any questions, right? about me. Now, you have done your homework, you have studied your CV, you have studied the organization and everything. That's okay. But there are so many things that you don't know about us, the company, right? So if you are asked to ask a question, don't ever say no, right? That kind of indicates that you are not a curious person. If you are not a curious person, you are not a good innovator, you are not a good creator, right? So as you can see, these questions seem very straightforward. But as an interviewer who is experienced, I have my own inner hidden purpose why I'm asking these questions from you, right? So you need to have proper answers, not to fake it, but to properly position yourself as what your personality is all about. And if you carefully look, we can portray a lot of your personality and a lot of your character out of these questions, right? And understand a lot about you. So I gave some tips very openly. These are going to help you immensely when you go to interviews. Please be prepared. So there could be other types of questions. Some other types of questions is what if analysis. Now, what if questions are probing questions to understand whether you have the ability to think on the spot, right? Because you can have a canned answer, but we are looking for creative people. If you are hit with a problem, are you a person who can survive the situation is a what if question, right? This is where you have to relax the most. I told you to relax earlier. Don't be nervous, right? What if question needs you to think. You can get a moment, pause, think, and get the job done, right? So there could be probing questions as well. I have given you examples, right? So use these as tips and try and explore and see whether you can face this situation in a relaxed manner. Now, when it comes to answering, there are some tips and tricks when you're providing answers, right? I already told you to listen very, very carefully. Listening is very, very important. And if you didn't understand the question, or if the question was a fuzzy one, you can seek clarification. It's okay, right? We love people who seek clarification rather than people who make assumptions when it comes to hiring people, right? And when it comes to people who are in my team, me as a senior person, I would like people who seek clarification. They're going to be carefully listening to the question and solve the problem in the right manner, right? And when you're giving answers, it's good to give examples and evidence rather than making ballpark statements. People who make ballpark statements are not good problem solvers. People who are data driven, evidence driven are good problem solvers, right? And be positive all the time, right? That's very, very important. If you are a negative person, you are not a leadership mindset person, right? So be a positive person, look at things from a positive perspective. Don't be negative when you're answering, right? That's very, very critical, right? For example, if you are an experienced person, if you are leaving one job and joining us for the second job, if I ask, why are you leaving, right? If you keep blaming and bashing your previous employer, we know that you are not a positive person, you are a negative person, you are a political or union mindset person, and we don't want to hire such kind of people with negative mindset. It's as simple as that, right? And keep answers to specific and to the point, right? Don't be blah blah blah, round robin. Don't say lullabies. We don't want that. But at the same time, don't be too short. You have to explain it with real world examples and evidence. That's a fact. And at the same time, don't be too verbose, right? Don't go in merry-go-rounds. Just be to the point. But having said that, there are situations like I find some people, they come to the interview, right? Their answers are like one word, two word. Yes, no. Are you a good learner? They will say yes. Right? When I ask the question, are you a good learner? Yes. And then I expect you to say some things about what did you learn in the past month, the previous month, and the previous month. I recently learned, yes, I'm a good learner, to prove that I learned this in the past month, I learned that in the previous month. That's what I'm looking for, right? And that's it. So it is not very long, not too short, right? Yes, no answers are not good enough in an interview, because me as the interviewer cannot gauge your attitude or answer or approach if you are too short, right? Now, take time to respond. Take time to respond doesn't mean that take a lot of time and respond and make a lengthy response. No. If you get a probing question, if you get a what if question, you need to take time and think about it, right? That's what it means in here, right? And sometimes you can learn from the interviewer's body language, right? Maybe interviewer is not happy. That basically means that the answer was not good enough, and then maybe you should explain a little bit more. And when you are answering and when you are looking at the interviewer's facial expressions and body language, if the language is about like the person is getting bored or not focusing, maybe you are not answering it in the proper fashion, so maybe you have to change the track. Maybe you can ask counter question, did I explain it proper, kind of question can be asked at the end, right? So what this means is that you need to learn reading body language, right? That's a key communication skill, obviously. So learning to read the body language is very, very important, right? And speak clearly, smile, and show enthusiasm. Some people come and they act as if they are terrified to face the interview. I sometimes ask, are you nervous, right? And then they relax, right? Some interviewers might not want to ask that question, right? Interviews also have their various characteristics, but what you have to remember is that you got to relax, right? So speaking clearly, providing the answer in a clear manner, and smiling, showing enthusiasm is very, very important, because that's about the body language. Don't fake it. Learn how to do it in the proper fashion, right? And know what you want to say and find the opportunity, right? There is always going to be an opportunity for you in the situation. Don't jump, but wait till the opportunity and tell what you want. That's also very, very important. Now, for the last point, an example is that sometimes people fail to answer some of the questions that I ask, especially in the, let's say, I ask a fundamental question or a language related question, and the person fails to answer, right? Then towards the end of the interview, I ask people whether they have some questions. They ask questions, and then some other people, very rarely, some people say that, tell me what I have to learn, because I understand that I didn't answer some of the questions properly. What do you think that I should learn between this interview and being hired, if I'm ever going to be hired? That's a very good attitude, right? Sometimes you can seek advice. Was my answer proper, right? If you are given the opportunity. But if you are not given the opportunity, don't overspeak or don't try to push it through, because then the interviewer might not like it. So what are the qualities that the employee is seeking? Well, we want people with good all-round intelligence. We are hiring human beings, right? Some people call it human resources, right? People are the most valuable asset in an organization. So you are being hired because of your intelligence, right? There's a lot of tools and machines, but they are not as intelligent as human beings yet, right? It will take another 25 to 30 years in order to get there, right? When machines and artificial intelligence get there, we can worry about that. But today we want people with all-round intelligence. If you lack all-round intelligence, well, machines and algorithms can replace you, right? So make sure that you display that, make sure that you develop that, make sure that you come prepared to show that off, right, during the interview. Then enthusiasm, commitment, motivation is very, very important, right? If you are a lousy, lazy person, we don't want to hire you. Good communication skills are critical. All the people in any organization today wants to have proper communication. Miscommunication is a big hit to organizations. Communication skill is a key skill. Ability to work in a team, ability to solve problems, capacity to work hard. Working hard is a given, right? right? Especially during the first few years, you have to learn and you have to work. You have to do both, right? The reality is that when you come from the campus, you will have to learn a lot in order to get used to an organization, right? The simple example that I give is that you have never worked with millions of lines of code while you are in the university or the organization, education institute. When you come to the organization, you have to work with millions of lines of code because you have to work on existing products, right? Nobody works from a greenfield, small products. It's very rare, right? So your capacity to work hard is very important, right? And your initiative matters, your personality matters. So these are the things that they look for, and you need to show these when you come to the interview. So be aware that the companies are looking for this. So what are the competencies that the organizations need, companies need? Well, adaptability, right? Can you work given situations, right? Maybe you know C++, can you learn Java and work on this? Maybe you know Java, but can you learn JavaScript and learn this? Maybe your service-oriented architecture, but can you learn microservices and get this job done, right? Then the other aspect is that integrity matters, right? Integrity is a key aspect of individuals, right? It's a very simple technique to check whether you are an integrated person, right? Sometimes I ask people whether you are a good learner, right? They say, yes, I'm a good learner. Then I ask them a tricky question. What did you learn in the last 3 months? And people have no answers. Well, that shows that you violate integrity. You just told me that you are a good learner. But for the last 3 months, you didn't learn something new. What do you mean by you are a good learner? You are not a good learner, right? So the interviewer can cross-check these aspects. If you lie on your CV, we can check that. We can cross-check that, right? The interviewers know the technique. So don't lie on the CV. Always say the truth. If you don't know, if you say, I don't know, but I can learn, that's a great statement rather than lying about it, right? So remember that integrity is a critical aspect, critical competency. Then innovation, teamwork, initiative, the drive for results. Knowing the business is very important. This is the part where you have to study the organization and come, right? And you can ask the questions in relation to the business to further drill down to know the business domain, right? Every organization wants to earn money. Every company wants to earn money, and every organization have a business model. So you need to learn the business model. You need to be able to deliver products that delivers maximum valuation for the business model that the company has. So you, even though you are a junior person, needs to know the business model. It's not a problem about marketing, sales, right? Every engineer, every QA person, every BA person, every DevOps person, every IT person needs to know the business and the value that they can provide the business, right? So you need to be able to learn the business, and you need to have business skills, right? And transparency matters. Transparency is that when you are doing things, you openly tell people what the situation is, what the progression is, etc., etc. You are not a person who is hiding and seeking, right? Then finally, there could be more attributes, but in terms of highlighting the aspects, are you a person who can make difficult decisions, right? You as a junior person needs to be able to make difficult decisions, right? Am I going to fix this or rewrite this? Are we going to throw this away, or are you going to do it in the proper fashion? And when you are making those decisions, are you business sensitive is the other question, right? So these competencies are very important when you are being hired, and most probably you will be checked for during the interview process for some of these competencies. So most of the organizations, right, they will ask you whether you have any questions, right? Like I said earlier in a previous slide, when discussing a previous slide, this one is a tricky question. Do you have any questions for me? When the interviewer is asking you whether you have any questions for the interviewer, the primary hidden purpose of that is to check whether you are a curious person, and your intelligence, your personality, etc., can be brought out by the questions that you are asking the interviewer. So I have given you some examples in terms of some of the questions that you can ask. Right? Basically, you can ask, if I am hired, what kind of training programs will I have to go through initially? What are the career development opportunities? What's the performance appraisal mechanism that you have? Right? What are the types of projects you have, and what kind of responsibilities am I going to get as a software engineer? So this is not about asking the role. This is in relation to the role. What responsibilities will I have to pay in addition to the generic role of a software engineer? Right? What kind of a reporting structure do I have? Right? And then performance appraisal, I already told you. What's the profile of the staff? Right? The profile of the staff matter. Why? Because I want to be mentored during my first years in the career. So I want to understand what caliber of people that I'm going to work with, that I'm going to work with. Right? Then you can also ask questions about the topics raised in the interview, right? What do you think about how did I do? Did I answer that question? I missed that answer. Could you please tell me what the real answer is? Those things are possible, right? Some people seek for advice, career advice, right? Can you advise me based on your experience what I should be doing, right? So what kind of skills do you think that I should develop? Right? And what do you think that I should go through between today and if I'm hired till the day that I join? There will be some time, right? What do you think that I should do? That's a very, very impressive question, right? And you can also ask what happens next. Now, if you carefully look at this question set, right? You never ask what my salary or what my compensation is, right? That's a critical rule. Unless otherwise the interviewer brings the subject matter, you should never ask about the compensation, right? Because if you are, yes, it is true that I'm going to come here and I'm going to have a salary, right? But the purpose of the interview is not to decide what salary I should be offered. Offer is a subsequent aspect. Offer is not part of the interview, right? Offer of salary is going to get decided once the interview process finishes, once the review comments are looked at, and in between HR people, the senior people in the organization, and the interviewer comments, they will decide to offer, and then they will decide to offer you some salary amount. Now, if you want to negotiate at the point of offer. Don't negotiate in the interview. Interview is not the right place to negotiate your salary. So I'm not saying don't negotiate salary, right? Don't don't misunderstand, right? I'm not saying that. I'm saying negotiate at the point of offer, and interview is not the point you are being offered a salary. Remember that. Now, some advice, some tips in terms of some causes of bad impressions, right? Well, obviously, if you are going for an interview, it's expected that you will dress properly, right? So good personal appearance is always expected, right? Even the interviewer might come in t-shirts and slippers, that's okay. You might not want to have a tie or a sari, etc. But dress decently, that shows that you are respecting the organization and you are valuing the opportunity in terms of the interview, right? Never be negative. I already told you earlier that be positive. So don't provide negative attitude. If you are evasive, if you don't answer the question, if you provide excuses, why couldn't you do it? Well, I didn't have enough time. That's a lousy excuse, right? If you are a junior person, we expect you to learn on your own. Learning is your own, right? We are not asking you to work. You are still not an employee, but you could have learned and got the job done, right? So don't be negative and don't use anything in the lines of being negative. And lack of interest and enthusiasm is also a problem, right? Some people come and sit in front of you and they are not really enthusiastic, passionate, lightning in the room. Some people come to the room, they might not know many things, but they lighten up the room. Learn how to become a positive personality, right? Learn how to become an enthusiastic personality. That's a key trait that you can have throughout your career. Lack of preparation. I already gave you tips and tricks in terms of how to prepare. Prepare. Don't under prepare and go. That's going to have a negative impact, bad impression on you. If you don't know what role you are going to play, is also a problem, right? And lack of career planning, lack of integrity, the taker mindset, overemphasis on money and rewards, right, etc., are going to be negative aspects, right? Like I already told you, if you want more money, if you want more rewards, you can negotiate that at the point of the offer, right? Not at the interview. Now, after the interview, you also need to do some things, right? Now, when you are in a career, first interview, second interview, third interview is not what is really important. The whole career is what is important, right? So you need to learn how to learn from interviews, right? So one aspect is that you need to review your own performance. What did go well? What went badly? What you wish you had said, right? And those analysis will prepare you for the next step, right? And you also need to prepare for the second or the final round, right? Usually, most of the organizations have 2-3 interviews. Some organizations have 5-6 interviews. It depends on the organization. They all have a purpose and a rationale to have multiple levels of interviews, right? So what's next and what the objective of the next needs to be known, right? So that's a good question to ask during the question phase. If you ask whether you have any questions for me, you can ask what's the next step, right? What's your interview process? What happens next is a good question to ask, right? And if you are accepted, it's okay. If you are not accepted, it's also okay. But see whether you are going to get a rejection mail. See whether you are going to get feedback. And if you get feedback, use it. That's really important for you to have, right? So don't stop at the end of the interview saying, I'm done. Plan. And this is important for your long-term career development, right? So few more things. Most of the interviews given this COVID situation will not happen face-to-face, but interview process will still happen. And most of the time, it will happen over video conferencing, right? So in a video conferencing situation, unless otherwise it's a phone call, right? Make sure that you dress up, make sure that you are in a proper place. Obviously, you have to make sure that the connection is good, right? Most of the connections are not really stable all the time, but they can bear with that. But make sure that you are in a good place with a good connection. Dress up and be ready for the video to be on, right? Having the video on gives almost the same experience as face-to-face interview, right? So be prepared for that particular aspect. And apart from that, all these tips and tricks that I told you applies for online interviews as well, because it is not about whether you are in the proximity or online. It is about the formation and the objectives and the good and bad and do's and don'ts of the interview process from your perspective, as well as understanding the organization's objectives and perspectives, right? All right. That's all I have in terms of the interview process today. We are going to conduct a next webinar probably in month of November. We will advertise that. And that is going to be on the title of future skills, right? If you are a person who is going to get employed in the future, right? What are the skills that you need in order to be successful in your career is the next webinar, right? So hopefully you can make it for that as well. Once you get a job, how are you going to keep improving your skills and what kind of skills will be required the most in the future, right? Because as you can see, traditional jobs are changing with the advent of AI, but humans are never going to get replaced in the near future, but you need a new skill set, right? That's how it is going to work. So come to that webinar if you want to understand the future skills that you need in order to be successful in the future job market. Like I said, this webinar was brought to you by TekXila, a project by Coachin. TekXila provides you online career boost programs over 3 months duration. And we have started it in the software engineering space. We can convert even junior people as well as people with some exposure into the IT field, both into being good engineers. And this one is mostly project-based learning, problem-based learning. We will give you enough content, but you have to do the projects. And based on the projects, we will give you feedback collectively as well as individually. Then our focus in these programs is to build skills, right? And have some good mentoring sessions as well. So what's your investment? Well, it runs over 3 months. Your commitment is there will be evening lectures 2 to 3 days a week, mostly 2 days and sometimes 3 days a week, up to 1 hour, 2 hour time slot. And the budget is for the whole 3 months, it's 60,000 rupees. There's an installment plan as well. So you can pay 20,000 per month and complete the 3 months. Right? You can get further information by going to our website. You must have seen the website already.